guys, it is Hope. Welcome back to my channel. I'm just feeling very casual today. We're filming with my background that I didn't really feel like picking up very much. Today I am actually really excited to share with you this video because we'll give you a little bit of a background if you're not sure and maybe you're new here. I was in a 5-year relationship and was engaged and had planned out an entire wedding, and then 2 months before the wedding we broke up, and so the wedding actually didn't happen, but I still feel like I have some valuable takeaways from almost a year-long wedding planning adventure that I want to share my thoughts with you. Things that I would maybe do differently with wedding planning. Again, I didn't actually go through with the wedding, so some of these things that I might say are not necessarily because I have experienced them through the wedding and was like, oh, I wouldn't do that again, but it's more, here's how I planned it last time, here's how I would do it differently this time. And obviously these are my personal opinions, and some of these things are going to depend on who the person you're with is and you know, the type of wedding that you want, if you want it big or small, like all those factors play into it. But some of these are more personal, some of these are more just general, and I just want to share them with you and kind of have just like a casual chat of just kind of my experience with wedding planning and go from there. So let's buckle on in and jump right into it. So I have everything written down. I am ready to go. I think I'll just kind of elaborate on each of these as we go, but grab a drink. I'm drinking Spindrift today. One day I would like to do actual videos of me planning my wedding because I didn't do that the first time. I just kind of was in a season of stepping away from YouTube and I feel like I lost a little bit of myself there. So I think this will be maybe the next time around I actually will share with you what I'm doing to plan my wedding. The first tip, and I would say this is the #1 tip that I tell any of my friends, especially if they're not engaged yet, because I felt like this was the biggest stressor when I was trying to plan a wedding after I got engaged. Have a venue in mind before you get engaged. Now, I'm not saying go make sure you have your one venue that you want and you pick it out so as soon as that you're engaged, you book it. That's not what I'm saying, but I think I remember when I was engaged, I was so overwhelmed by all of the options out there, and I had like looked into venues and new venues that were around, but I didn't fully expect to be so overwhelmed by the time I got engaged. If you want a wedding within the year of your engagement, you're gonna have a hard time finding places that are not booked yet, especially if you're looking for a certain date. So I would recommend at least knowing what's around in your area. Maybe that doesn't mean not touring them or even touring them, but just at least having an idea of like, okay, here's what's in the area. Here's what I'm kind of feeling for that wedding of, I really know that I want a barn wedding, and knowing what barns are in the area and which ones are maybe in your price range, scope them out. I still to this day have no shame emailing a venue and being like, I'm not even engaged yet, but I am just very curious about like your venue because I want to know what are the amenities included, what's the pricing included, like what does all that entail. So I was very overwhelmed, and I feel like I kind of settled on a venue. Not that I wasn't happy with the venue that we were going to go with because I love the place, but I just feel like I was so like having a hard time deciding which one I wanted to do. And I think if I would have just thought ahead and actually just looked at a few different places, even if it was just online beforehand, that would have helped me a ton. Now, if you're watching this and you're already engaged, well, that's a different story, but I think that's like obviously the very first thing you want to do is to find your venue, because then that's when you can find your date and then book all other vendors kind of after that. But that was definitely the most stressful for me, especially because my engagement was going to be just under a year. So, and it is crazy to me the amount of people that book so far in advance and have like engagements that are so far in advance, because it's wild, that wedding world out there. And I would be open and flexible to your dates too, because I didn't really have a date in mind. I just knew I wanted to get married between September and October, maybe November, but like in the fall time, which is obviously in prime time, so it's harder to find dates then. But if you keep your date open, that also helps. My second one is land on a budget and stick to it. Now, I remember being told this, and I was like, I don't even know where to start with a wedding budget, because how do you know? Like, how do you know where to start? So I'm gonna give you a tip. Today in 2024, I would say most weddings that you are going to see that are gonna have a barn venue, a photographer, maybe a videographer, maybe not, catered food, flowers, some decor, you know, the save the dates and regular invites, like all of your traditional things that you would think a DJ would be included in a wedding, you're looking at about $30,000. That's what my wedding was going to be when it was all said and done, was about $30,000, which makes me want to have a stroke right now. I lost almost 3/4 of that, like, and it wasn't just me, but like combined, the two of us lost almost 3/4 of that, which is so painful to say. Just after you book things with deposits, you don't really get money back from vendors. But for me going forward, I know that my next wedding, I don't want to spend that much. And I felt like I was being reasonable. And to be honest, I still think I was being very reasonable. Like, our venue was only, and obviously it depends on where you're getting married. I'm in the Midwest, so it's gonna depend on where you are. But I found a venue that was like it was like 5 to 6 grand, which for a venue is really not a terrible price if you're getting one that's gonna be of a nicer venue. And I knew like I wanted to spend money on like a nicer venue, so ours was gonna be 5 to 6 grand. There are plenty of venues that are double or triple that, and I was not comfortable spending that on just a venue itself. So I felt like I was pretty reasonable. I wasn't like going very, 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 very budgeted, but I also wasn't like overspending, I felt, and I thought I was being conscious of kind of trying to land kind of in the middle, and ours was still around 30,000. That's a general range of like, if you're thinking you want a really cool venue, of photographer, videographer, DJ, flowers, all that stuff, and you just want to just go like pretty middle of the road, you're looking at about $30,000, give or take, in the Midwest anyway. But it is crazy how much money is spent on these days, and I would say like think of like where you want to be in that range and kind of go from there, and just scope out like what are general costs in your area. Photographer, some are going to hover around 3,000, some are going to hover around 5, some are going to hover around 7, you know, like find your range and go from there. So you might not have an exact budget, but like think about what range you want to stick in and then kind of build it back. But man, it is hard though to keep it like at a decent price if you want to include all those things. And even to this day, I think about what I would do next, and it's still hard for me to think about because I don't know what I would do. The third thing I would do next is really prioritize my invite list. Because we were young, we had a lot of family and extended family that wanted to come, which was awesome. And we wanted to really make sure we had friends that were our age that would come. So we started expanding our list. And before we knew it, we just kept expanding it and expanding it and expanding it. And we kept adding people until like a month before we broke up. Like, we were still adding people in. And that is one thing that I want to be so good about the next time, is like choosing my guest list number and sticking with it and not making exceptions. And it's really hard because sometimes you're like, okay, maybe when I got engaged 9 months ago, I wasn't that close with this person, but now I'm all of a sudden close with this person and I want to invite them to the wedding. That's really hard. And then once you kind of invite that one person, then there might be another person. And so trying to stick in with your guest list is so important, especially because the more you tweak it, the more money you're adding on, because the more food you're having to provide, the more invites that you're ordering, you know, like everything kind of adds up. And so I think making sure that you're solid on your guest invite list by the time you send out save the dates, if you do, and not changing it after that, is very key. For me, because our wedding was getting, I think we were at like 240 people at one point, which is quite a bit of people for me anyway, and it was going to be fun. I was excited about having a big wedding. It was going to be like a party, and I was really excited about that. And I think I was getting caught up in a lot of that, and was losing sight of the actual marriage itself. And so I think the next time around, I'll have a very small list. And it depends on who you're with too, but just knowing like who I'm with now, and kind of where I really want to be. I felt like I was straying away from where I really wanted to be the first time, and I'm really looking to be a lot smaller and just really have my core people there. So that's a personal thing for me, but I would say in general, sticking with your invite list is so important. Number 4 is being conscious of my bridesmaids and groomsmen, like little invite gifts, proposal gifts. I tried to be conscious of this last time too, because I didn't want to get them anything too cheesy that was just like, that had like Hope's wedding written all over it. I wanted something for them to like actually use again. And I didn't think I did a terrible job. I don't think I got too crazy, but I actually had a coworker of mine just get engaged last fall, And for her bridesmaid gifts, she gave them a printout piece of paper that she literally just printed out that had like, it looked like it was like a replica of a newspaper in a way, and it had like, you know, will you be my bridesmaid, their wedding, a picture of the two of them, and then she just wrapped it up in a bouquet with a bouquet of flowers and gave it to them. And I think that is so sweet because you're not getting tacky stuff that you're holding on to. You know, the flowers are beautiful and it's a nice gesture, and then also having the just piece of paper to just save is easy. It's just one piece of paper, or they can throw it, but I love that idea. And so I think if I were to do it again, I would do something similar to that, is like keep the bridesmaid proposal gifts and even the day of gifts, the wedding gifts, the bachelorette gifts, all that stuff can become so tacky. It's fun, but it can be very tacky. And next time I would do it very simple. Again, simple is key. Number 5 kind of goes back in with number 2, which was landing on a budget. The biggest struggle that I had with planning a wedding was figuring out who's paying for what. And sometimes it depends on your family situation. Luckily, when I did it before, both of our parents ended up helping pitch in. But for a while it was unknown because neither sides were being very clear on it. And so this is another thing where I want to be firm in that the next time, of like within a month of getting engaged, sitting down with both parents and saying, we love you no matter what. I don't care if you pitch in or not, but I just need to know if they're not going to do that on their own. And it's really hard because respectfully, and I've had like conversations with this before, of like, I feel like as a parent, that should be one of the first things you should do, is to sit down with your child after they're engaged and be like, I would love to help you. Here's how much I want to give you. Or I'm really sorry, I'm in a situation that I can't help you right now. And I think most people would be understanding and respect that. And I would have respected that even if they could or couldn't. But what was hard is I felt like I had to hunt them down to get an answer out of them because they kept delaying it. And I am not about doing that anymore. And so I think the next time it happens, I'm going to sit down with them and be like, this is what we're envisioning for the wedding. This is our budget. Are you going to help us or not? And, you know, we love you if you don't, and we love you if you do, and it doesn't matter. And obviously, like, rephrasing it in a nicer way. But I think being firm in that and having that boundary is going to be so important, because it's hard to, like, toe the line of, not that I would have spent more because a parent or somebody else was pitching in to help pay for a wedding. It was more that I needed to know what I needed to have ready to pay for when deposits came in, when dates came up for us to drop money down. That stuff is important. So it doesn't matter if, like, it's not the fact of, okay, if you're going to give me money, I'm going to spend more. Maybe you're that way, but that's not what I was. It was more, I just want to know so that I can best prepare for how I need to pay money, and for me financially, how I'm going to sort this out. So that's another key thing, is being upfront about that. And it is so hard. It's so much easier said than done, but I would 100% recommend that, because it is just so nice to have that, like, up front, and then you don't have to deal with it again. And hopefully you don't have to do it. Hopefully they come to you, but you know, sometimes you have to hunt them down. Number 6 also kind of has to do with money, but I would say focus on paying your deposits up front first and not paying down everything. Most vendors don't require you to pay down everything up front, and they often don't, like, add interest, if you will, to your entire fee if you don't pay it up front. You pay it all up front, or you pay a deposit and you pay the total at the end, often ends up being the same price. Very few vendors that I went through actually gave me a discount. The photographer was the only one that gave me a discount, and it ended up biting me in the butt because I ended up getting none of that back. So I essentially paid her almost $4,000 just for engagement pictures, because she never actually took the wedding pictures, and that hurt. Not saying that you should prepare for a breakup or for something casual, some casualty to happen and you're not going to go through with the wedding, but it is smart, I feel, to not pay for everything up front if it's not going to cause you more in the end, just because you never know what's going to happen. Pay your deposit down, and then, you know, if you're getting closer to the wedding and it's before the date and you are just like, you know, you're still moving forward with it, then pay it down. But I just think, like, it still kills me to this day thinking about how I paid so much money for, like, a photographer who then came back to me and was like, sorry, it was in the contract, you're done. And I understand she has to run a business, but it was also very frustrating to have that. And so I think from now on, I will pay my deposits and not pay full until the actual wedding is over and she's provided, or he or she or whoever has provided the full service, and then I will pay them, or however their contract lists. But if that's an option, I'd recommend that, unless they're gonna charge you more for not paying up front and having to split payments, then I would pay up front. But that's a personal preference, but that's just another thing I learned. Another one is having a shorter engagement. So my engagement was just under a year, like I had said, and I honestly think like a year is pretty good for an engagement. I think if it was longer than that, it would have been too much. The reason being is planning a wedding through your engagement is really hard because it feels like it just extends and drags on forever. And I understand if you really want a certain date or you want a certain timing, sometimes you'll have to extend and go farther out than your, than your perfect timeline. But for me, having a year-long engagement was just enough. But if I were to do it again, I'd probably do it sooner. Like I'd probably do 6 months at the earliest, but maybe like a 9-month. I think a 9-month engagement is kind of a perfect timeline because it's not too long, but it also, you're moving quick enough that you can get stuff done but not feel like you're super rushed. For me, I just felt like a year long was plenty, and if I were to go over a year, it would have felt like it would have just been dragging on, because when you're planning a wedding, like that's your entire life. And then you have a full-time job or you're in school full-time, like that's a lot. And so I think if I were to just drag it on even more, it would just been too much. Because even though you have more time, you think, oh, I have more time, but you're still doing, it's almost like you're putting in more work because you're dragging it out so long. Whereas if you just got it done, you got it done. And wedding planning is a lot. It doesn't stop. Okay, so for number 8, I think the next time that I plan a wedding is I will probably just skip save the dates. Or if I do them, I might do them as like a virtual card. Now, this is easier said because I will have a smaller invite list likely, so that means that the people that I'm inviting I'm actually really close with, so they will likely be communicated with, knowing that they're going to come to the wedding instead of a bigger invite list. However, it's so much money to keep printing all that stuff, and you're printing and then you're having to mail things out twice because you're printing and save the date and an invite, and then you have to mail both out, and then they're actually mailed out not super far apart. And if you have a shorter engagement, then you can just send your invites out a little bit early and just call it good there. So I'm going to a couple weddings this year, and one friend of mine is just totally skipped her save the dates and just sent the invites out, and I kind of like that. And she's having a bigger wedding party too, but it was just nice because it's like, okay, I had already talked to her and I was invited to her bachelorette trip, so I knew that I was invited to the wedding. So I just feel like it's just so much easier. Now, if you're having a bigger wedding, that might be different, but for me, having a smaller one, it would make it easier. And it's just less work. Less work, less money, and it just saves time. Number 9 is skipping the over the top after party. I was so concerned towards the end, and I think the biggest stressor for me towards the end was trying to plan this after party because I wanted it to be fun, but I was so worried about everybody else and not thinking about myself, which sounds like it should be the other way around. But when it's my wedding day, I just want to be concerned about myself and how this day is for me and my husband. And I felt like I was losing sight of that, and I kept straying away from that piece of it. And then I was trying to plan the after party because our music had to be shut off by 10 p.m. I think because of where it was located and the city noise laws with other houses around. So then we were trying to plan an after party with a party bus, to then bar hop, to then where are they gonna stay, so making sure I coordinated that. And it was just so much work, which I understand. I didn't want to drop that on them to have to figure all that out because that wouldn't be fair either. But I think just cutting that all together and losing the whole after party bus, that thing, I think was so relieving that I was that was the last piece of it that I was trying to plan, and it was so much work. And I think if you just do something easy of, hey, we're gonna go to this bar as an after party, figure out how you're gonna get there, and you're good, they're adults. Obviously, I didn't want them to drive if they had been drinking, but they're also adults and they can plan a ride. So that's one of those things of, it may sound harsh to say that, but I was losing sight of the actual day, and I was getting so caught up in this after party, and I had people that were helping me plan the party bus, so it wasn't like it was all me, but it was still, and the Airbnb too, but it was just, it was stressing me out so much, and I was like, why am I stressing out about something like this when I don't need to be? And so that's when I was like, okay, I think next time I just wouldn't even do it. And then I'm with somebody who doesn't even really like to drink, so we wouldn't even do it anyway. But yeah, I think that's another piece of it where I would just be like, if it's stressing you out too much, and after parties could be really fun, and I'm not saying to, like, if that's your thing, to skip that. I am not bashing that at all, but I just think if it's overwhelming you too much and trying to worry about other people, stop, because you shouldn't be worrying about other people. You should be worrying about your wedding day. Okay, number 10, and this one kind of goes hand in hand with like number 1 of knowing your venue in mind first, but I would spend more time researching my vendors. So like what I'm doing for food and drink, my DJ, my photographer, and I would say just keep a running list in mind. If you know you're probably going to get engaged in the next whatever timeline, if you feel like you're going to get engaged soon, just have an idea of like photographers that are around that you're interested in, kind of knowing that price range, knowing what caterers are around, if your venue has you stick with a certain caterer, or if you can bring in your own caterer. We were going to do an actual pizza food truck, so that was really awesome and fun, and I was really excited about it. So I wouldn't say that I regretted some of that stuff, but I think like I got so overwhelmed in trying to find somebody that I could book for my date, like the food and the DJ and the photographer especially. And so I think just knowing which parts are more important to you, whether that's the food or the photographer or the DJ or whatever, and then really researching that, and then knowing kind of what's available when you go, before you even get engaged or as you're planning it. Because I think sometimes you get so caught up and overwhelmed where you're like, I just need to book something and they need to have my date, and especially when you're crunching in time there. And so if you know of that stuff ahead of time, it just makes your life so much easier. And I think part of that too is having a smaller engagement period helps even more to know that in advance. If you have a year or longer engagement, it may not be as important, but still, I had a year-long engagement and I still wanted to know some of that stuff in advance. So I would just recommend looking at what's around in your area, or just knowing a general idea of what you want. And not everybody knows that they're getting engaged in a certain timeline, but like even for me, like I know that like I'm not ready to be engaged right now, but like knowing that I will be in the future, and having just some of those key points in my head, and just keep like in the back of my head, or having a running list of all these key things of knowing what I want next helps. I kind of have like 2 more. I'd say 1, my wedding registry, I noticed that we had just bought a house. So we had gotten engaged, we bought a house like almost 6 months later, not quite 6 months later. And then we were living in that house and we were gonna get married. So we like got engaged in October, we bought a house in February, we were gonna get married the following October. And so we had some things, but we had some house things on our list still, and we wanted that on our registry. But I felt like when I was on Amazon or like Target or any of these sites for my registry, I just started adding stuff to it and was like, oh, that'd be nice, knowing that it was probably gonna be junk one day, that I didn't need more stuff. And so I think being really particular on your registry and really choosing items that you know you truly want. And if you don't have anything that you're like, I truly want this, then just leave it open for people to donate money. Because I think a lot of people enjoy just giving money and letting you spend it the way you want, whether that is towards a future house, whether that is towards your honeymoon, the wedding funds, whatever that may be. And if you have like a bridal shower and, you know, a bachelorette trip or something, and people want to get you gifts, definitely have some gifts on there if you really want something in particular. But I just feel like, for me, I don't need as much stuff anymore. And again, I'm not even in a house right now, I'm in an apartment. But knowing that one day I will have a future house, I will likely just buy those things that I want in the future and don't need a lot of in-between items. That doesn't mean that I won't like ask for a few nicer things. Being more particular about what I actually put on the registry instead of just adding random junk from Amazon on there. The final one that I would say, and I kind of like wrote a couple ideas here that I'm gonna combine into 2, which is assessing what I really want and sticking with it, and then having my dream wedding list planned. And I think that's key for me, is just having like my dream wedding planned out, to know this is what I would absolutely love to have, and here are things that I can give on and flex on, and here are things that are really important to me. And I think if you have that and you stick with it, that is so important, because I feel when you are wedding planning and you get so overwhelmed, you can lose sight of sticking to your plan, your original plan, and things will ebb and flow and you'll have to tweak, and there are going to be things that you are going to stick to and things that you're not. You're going to add on and flex, but I think having that dream plan in the back of your head or written out on paper is really going to help you stick to it, and then gives you the confidence to stand up for people and be like, no, this is my wedding, this is what I want, and sticking with it. And I think there's something so powerful in that. Some people are going to have a hard time with that, especially like I think a lot of family members or people that are close to you that have opinions. But if you have that and you know it and you're firm in it, that it helps so much with the planning. And don't allow people to just start inviting their son's girlfriends to the wedding. That's another thing that you can run into issues with, especially if you have family, and sticking up to it and saying no to it is so important. And have fun. This is a lot of like, I feel like there was some like more negative or like serious tips, but have fun and really enjoy it. It can be so overwhelming, but it can be fun at times. And I'm actually really looking forward to doing it again and actually doing it with the way that I like really want and have my dream wedding planned out, so I know. And I'm really excited about like getting to do it again and like getting to really feel like I had a trial run, which in the planning anyway. And I'm not saying like that relationship was a trial run, but it's just the planning of it is I gotta dabble into what it was like to plan weddings, and now that I feel like I know, I can take that and use that in the future. I hope you guys found this helpful. Please let me know down below what advice you have, whether you're in the thick of planning right now or you have planned a wedding. I'd love to hear your advice down in the comments, and I'm sure other people would too. Give this video a thumbs up if you like wedding videos, because hopefully in the future I can share some planning with you and just kind of how I plan my next wedding, and I hope to take you along that journey. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye.